Hey there, good folks. Ken Kunin from On Song International. Welcome to the first episode of Ask the Old Timer. The purpose of this episode and these segments will be to give you some information so you can hopefully smoothly navigate the music industry that lies ahead. So, first question comes from Jordan Merrick, fantastic singer-songwriter from Brisbane. And Jordan asks, what makes a good recording? That is a terrific question, one that we're going to have to answer in segments. First thing is before you go and you hit that red button and you record anything, the question needs to be asked, is the song ready to be recorded? Meaning, one, is every part of the song as strong as the other? If you have a great verse but you got a crappy chorus, you got to keep working on that song. Is the song authentic? What is it about it that is unique, different, that would make the listener want to listen to it once all the way through and then hopefully many times through? In terms of the technical components of what makes a good recording, well, that's really about three things. That's recording something well at the source. That's then about mixing what you've recorded. And lastly, that comes down to mastering. Let's look at each component. As far as getting it well at the source, that is going to be dependent upon, one, making sure that you're going to record a song in a room that is well treated, to be honest with you. Certain rooms are going to be too noisy. That requires stuff like that behind me, where you have sound panels that absorb noise, so you don't have lots of feedback and echo, etc. You're obviously going to have a decent microphone. You're going to have a computer these days more than anything else to record things, check that your levels are well. Things like preamps are very helpful to capture a nice warm tone, to sometimes boost signals. Then you're going to be able to have to mix it. So obviously if it's just, say, a piano or an acoustic guitar and a vocal, that's going to be pretty easy to mix. If we're looking at a full band, we could be looking at endless tracks, 20, 30, 40 tracks. That takes a certain professional approach and a reasonable amount of experience to be able to do that. And then lastly, it's about mastering. So mastering is the final sheen. When you master something, and again, it depends on what your goal is. If it's just a simple phone video, maybe that's not obviously a big issue. But if it is going to be a radio release, something that is going to be ready for radio, but also different social media platforms, including YouTube, you're going to want to make sure that that's mastered so it sounds professional across all different levels. Now, lastly, really importantly, is what makes a good recording. I think a great deal of, besides having a good song, is how much emotion was put through the playing. So to me, if something is clinical, it might be recorded perfectly well. It might be a decent song, but if there isn't a certain amount of passion, if I can't buy what I'm hearing, well, then it's going to come up short and not necessarily be a good recording. So thank you, Jordan, for that question. Next question that came up, and again, these questions, they were put down on our Facebook On Song private page, and that's where I want people to actually be involved and to have their questions on a weekly basis, and we'll get back to them as soon as we can. Second question is from Dan Jordan, Warbirds. He has a great question. Has the industry become easier or harder to navigate due to self-recording, self-promotion, publishing, etc.? Fantastic question. It is the question, really. I suppose when I started out in the music industry 30 years ago, it wasn't easy to, one, self-record. Two, you didn't have social media. You didn't even have email that was utilized all the time to be able to promote things. And certainly self-publishing, while it was there, it wasn't as easy as it is today. So here's the upside. The upside is the playing field is now way more level. It used to be you had very few options. You either, if you were lucky enough, you got a deal on a small indie label. If you were more successful, if there was more want and need to get your music out there, well, then you had major labels and major publishing companies that would woo you with publishing deals. So you got money up front to go in and write and record, and then you had to sell X amount of merchandise, generally in CDs, albums, etc., that paid that back before you were going to see a cent after that. So Look, it goes both ways. On one hand, it's a little bit worse because anyone and everyone can get material out there. The downside of that is there's not a lot of editing. It's like trying to find a needle in the haystack. And it allows people, I suppose, a chance to grow as an artist. That's the upside, is that you don't necessarily have to have a masterpiece from point A or your first release to where you are now. So it gives you a chance to be able to see what works and what doesn't work. That's the great thing about self-promoting. That's the great thing about self-publishing and recording, is that little by little you can learn what is affecting people, what is about your music or your songs or your style of recording that will hopefully build your audience. On the downside is, okay, anyone can come out, and sometimes you have one chance to make a first impression. And if that first impression is not impressive, you're going to have a hard time getting someone's interest on the next one. So that being the case, you got to have a good think about what you actually put out there. Whether it's on a small platform like this or whether it's on a big platform, I would hope that people sometimes, particularly when they're getting their chops up, so to speak, are a little bit selective in what they release, because it's very easy for someone to see a couple songs and go, you know what, they're not really doing it for me, and therefore sort of turn off and lose interest. Also, worth noting in terms of navigating these waters is that if you make enough noise on your own independent channels and you create your own story, guess what? That's when labels and that's when publishers will come looking for you. But once again, and I've had a video in the past about this, you got to create your own story. I think I put a video called "Put Down the Bong" or something like that, because people have a lot of pipe dreams. You have to actually do the legwork, and when you do, then bigger companies are going to take a little bit greater interest in what you're doing. So hopefully that answers your question, Warbirds. Next question from, and it's related to the last question, from Tom George. Where's the money? I don't know, mate. I don't really see much of it these days anymore when it comes to music. I think the answer is the money is when you are big enough that you're able to go from town to town and sell enough tickets and hopefully sell enough merchandise. That's where some money is. The other part of the money is, and I've probably made more money in terms of publishing from getting things out in TV shows, film, etc., that's still a place, an avenue where there's money. At radio, oh, if you're massive all over and beyond, say, community radio, then you'll see some publishing money down the track. But it is not an easy industry. I'm not going to lie to you, to actually make a dollar in these days. In fact, it's getting harder and harder, and that is something that drives people away. I took a 10-year hiatus because of that. You make a certain amount of money, but if you got a family to feed, it's really tough to rely on this industry as I don't know, I suppose, what's going to put a roof over your head. All right. Next question from the unbelievable Surianne. Hello, Surianne. I think jokingly she asks, do I miss or do I regret cutting off the dreadlocks? Not so much. I had about a 10-year run with dreadlocks once upon a time, and the thing that bugged me after a while was every article beginning, dreadlocked singer-songwriter Ken Kunin. It's nice to be identified as something that wasn't in the first paragraph talking about my hair. But I think more importantly, she wanted to know what keeps you pushing through, what adds fuel to your fire. For me, what adds fuel to my fire is the thought that tomorrow I might write the best song that I've ever written, that I might have the ability to move people and create a little bit of a soundtrack for some emotions that they're feeling. That the project that I'm in the middle of, I Am the Fixer, which we've just released part 1 of 3, that is attached to a soundtrack and a screenplay I've written. That's what pushes me through. It's, can I do something different after, being in this industry for 30 years? So to me, it's about what is unique, what is new, what is exciting, what's going to personally challenge me. And right now I'm in the middle of something that is definitely challenging me. And On Song International does the same. The idea of creating a platform of like-minded people to be able to get their music out there and to share their passion. So it all comes down to passion. It's certainly not about the about waking up tomorrow and being rich and famous from it. All right, Michael Williams, love this question. He's going to be going and living in his van. He's going to do a solo album that he's going to release, and the idea was to go from town to town selling CDs and art, and wants to know how he's going to promote out-of-town gigs, set up shows, etc., especially where they might not know him. And I think, you know what? I think sometimes to have some success, you got to put all your cards on the table and you got to really lay it out there. I love this idea because what you're selling is you're selling your story. Okay, that got my answer straight away. It's like, okay, go away from the safe route. Sometimes when your ass is on the line, that's when you're going to produce the best. So you're going to record an album in your van. I wasn't certain whether you're actually selling it, recording it in your van, or you're just going to move into your van and go from place to place. Either way, what we have here is we have your story. So what I think is important is I think that you start, when you're doing shows, you start with your home audience. And whether that's small, whether that's big, you find out who it is that's actually talking about the music that you're putting out there, and also what venues are playing this. So I'm assuming that you're playing as a solo act. So that could be anything from coffee shops, that could be proper venues, that could be community centers, wherever you can get a gig. Document what you're doing, create your story. Go, while you're actually having this experience, why not film it? You can record it, so why not film it? And then when you've had a little bit of interest in what that story is, and maybe you had 10 people or 20 people go and see yourself, use that to propel the next show. So maybe you go 20, 30, 40 miles, kilometers outside of your area and try to build your audience there. Hit up all the local press that is available. And whether that's community radio, whether that is small newspapers, blogs, etc., and you got to start little by little. But think about it this way. Go take some footage of you recording this album. And that footage, go take that footage when you go and you play a live show. And if it's something that's special, edit it together and get it out to editors, get it out to booking agents to be able to say, hey, look, not only am I recording this, but I'm going to be hounding local media, and we're going to, maybe it's about you opening up for another act initially. Maybe it's about you finding a couple of different artists that are doing something that's likewise in terms of music, and build a bill for the night. So to me, it's a big ask to be able to go to a venue and say, hey, look, I'm going to play 2 or 3 hours of original music and keep an audience. I don't see that happening very often. Whereas if you can find a couple other artists to fit in on, and it's a night to be able to say, hey, I'm a singer-songwriter fan, if I'm talking about the actual audience, then you can build something. To me, it's all about building your story. I got a new album. I recorded it in my van. I'm going to go from town to town. And maybe what it is maybe you're looking at actually playing shows in your van. Okay, so maybe it's about having a small PA and you go to town and you actually present your show, so you don't necessarily need the venue. Something to think about. Again, it's about what is your story and what is your tale. Anyways, that's the first episode of Ask the Old Timer. Put your comments below. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, come on, get on it. Ring that bell so you can get notifications. You can find more videos like this. You can find new content from new artists, etc. Go check us out on Facebook as well. Join our private page because that's where people interact the most. All right, you take care. Adios.